Welcome everybody to the September 20th council meeting in the city of Kent. Would the clerk please read the roll?
Mr. Amrine?
Here.
Mr. DeLeon?
Here.
Mr. Ferrara?
Here.
Mr. Kuhar?
Here.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Here.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Here.
Mr. Sidoti?
Here.
Mr. Turner?
Here.
Ms. Wallach?
Here.
We have opening remarks by Mr. Amrine.
Yeah, I really don't have any opening remarks, just a welcome to Kent State University Journalism School. So,
Yes, welcome.
welcome. And if you could please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I didn't want to roll it.
Okay, thanks.
I need approval for the August 16th meeting minutes. Mike? Who seconded? John? Is there any questions? Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
And one abstention. Okay, thank you. Communications, public communications? Anybody sign in?
There are two.
Who's the first one?
Mr. Robert Wilson?
Robert, I got to read something first. While the law does not require council to provide time for public comment, we have historically invited the public to make comment, and we appreciate their input. This is the time when residents and others can comment on matters and concerns of them. However, we will not engage in any debate, and as president of council, I reserve the right to end any public comments that are disrespectful or otherwise objectionable. We ask you come to the podium, speak into the microphone clearly, give your name and address, and we'll give you 3 minutes. Now you can go.
Thank you. Mayor Fiala, members of council, my name is Robert Wilson. I live at 536 North Willow Street in Kent. I'm here to request that council initiate action to bring in additional revenue to the city without increasing taxes by the use of public-private partnerships. Some examples from other Ohio cities to illustrate the kind of project I mean. In August, the City of Akron announced a request for proposals from private businesses that produce ground-based solar-generated electricity to lease from the city some unused land to construct a solar electric generating facility and pay rent to the city for use of the city's land. The land in question is the former Hardy Road landfill. Finding a solar partner to rent this kind of land makes a lot of sense. In a similar vein, Dayton is seeking proposals for a solar installation. The city conducted a feasibility study in the fall of 2022 to consider ground-mounted solar on city-owned property adjacent to the Miami water treatment plant and adjacent to the water reclamation facility. At this time, the city has decided to move forward with soliciting proposals for installing roughly 5 megawatts of ground-mounted solar at the Miami water treatment plant, with the primary aim of reducing electric bills while also reducing carbon emissions, utilizing a brownfield site, and showcasing the city's commitment to its climate goals. And there are cities that have gone beyond seeking proposals. Cincinnati is home of the largest city-led solar array in the United States. It began producing electricity in the spring of 2022. It cost $125 million to install, but Cincinnati did not pay any of that. Instead, they entered into an agreement to purchase the power from the array to provide enough clean, renewable energy to power the City of Cincinnati buildings and facilities. This includes City Hall, but also places like health clinics, police districts, and Greater Cincinnati Water Works facilities. Cincinnati negotiated with landowners, working out an arrangement where those farm owners got more in fees from the solar operation than they would have gotten leasing to soybean growers. I mention this project as an example of a creative approach to saving money and lowering a city's carbon footprint without large capital investments by the city. Some examples of how Kent might try something like this: we have some properties that might work, parking lots, our water treatment plant, or maybe our well field, and even rooftop under city control. The The roof of this building, plus the roof of the building across the street, plus the roof of the new building, would provide a fair amount of solar power if we entered into some kind of arrangement. We also have sizable industrial properties in Kent. Even if the city doesn't own them, we might be able to come to some arrangement with landowners who might be interested in turning unused land into money makers. I realize that Akron, Dayton, and Cincinnati are all much bigger than Kent, so I also looked for smaller cities that have solar projects going. In Cohoes, New York, a working-class community of 17,000 residents, the town turned its own reservoir as a way of generating power from municipal buildings using a floating solar array. We don't have a reservoir, but this is the idea, the kind of creative approach. They were able to do that by combining state and federal grant money. And they came up with $5 million to do this in a town that didn't have the money to do it. So I'm just here to encourage you to look at these. You know, we can talk about issues like sustainability, but if we got into something that actually paid for itself, we could meet some of our goals, feel good about it, and not have our taxes go up. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to
Do you
me.
happen to have a copy that the clerk could have of that?
I have a copy of City of Akron's request for proposals for theirs that I'd be happy to leave with you.
Well, whatever you read in the minutes, it'd be easier for her to transcribe in our minutes.
Yep, I'll give her what I read.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you. Is it
Thank
further,
you.
Amy?
It's got a few mistakes.
It's okay. Ann Ward.
Thank you.
Name and address, Ann. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Ann Ward. I live at 474 Longmere Drive. As you know, I've been an environmentalist probably since I moved here. I really want to speak in support of this project. It is really falls into the basket of a win-win. If it wouldn't cost the city of Kent any money, and yet would conform to our climate action plan, and it's just a very good, feel-good project. So I hope you'll give it some positive consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ann. Further, Amy?
That's it.
Written communications, please.
The Civil Service Commission meeting agenda for August 21st was received on August 18th. An unsigned letter from a resident who resides on Mohawk Place in Kent in regard to Portage County not placing a recycling contract bid was received and forwarded to Council on August 29th, 2023. Standing Rock Cemetery Board of Trustees agenda for September 14th meeting was received on September 6th, 2023. An email from Christopher Myers in regard to the Shaw Drive/Lando Lakes noise complaint was received on September 6th. The Planning Commission agenda for the meeting on September 19th was received on September 11th, 2023. Meeting minutes from the June 8th, 2023 Portage County Solid Waste Management District Policy Committee meeting were received on September 12th, 2023. Additional communication received. The Civil Service Commission meeting agenda for September 18th was received and posted on September 14th. The Parks and Rec Board packet for their meeting on September 21st was received and posted on September 15th. An anonymous email from a Kent resident in regards to the recycling contract with Republic Services was received and forwarded to Council on September 13th, 2023. And a letter regarding acceptable recycling material questions from Diane Stressing, along with an empty drink container in a plastic bag, was received and forwarded to Council on September 15th, 2023. That's
Okay,
all.
thank you. City Manager report, Mr. Emery.
Yeah, I'd like to move items 1 through 8 in the city manager's report.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Is there any discussion? Gwen?
I'd just like to thank publicly the Joe Woodward Salem Memorial Foundation for their donation to Kent Parks and Recreation in support of Art in the Park. It's a tremendous donation, and we truly appreciate it, and hopefully everyone had a chance to go to Art in the Park this year. It was outstanding. So thank you very much to Joe Woodward Salem Memorial Foundation.
That was in the city manager's report?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right, got it. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. We're going into standing committees. Keep in mind, all these legislations are going to be considered tonight were discussed 2 weeks ago in our committee meeting, so it isn't just something we did tonight. Committee of the whole, I need a motion for the September 6th meeting.
So moved.
Garrett and Mike seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
And one abstention, and I have one recommendation. I need.
Abstain, have to abstain too, because I wasn't here.
Oh, yeah, me too.
What's this?
3 abstentions.
Three abstentions.
On the action or the
Meeting minute
minutes?
approval.
On the minutes.
Yeah, the minutes.
Then
Okay,
I'll,
we got 3, Amy?
Got it.
then I'll move the action.
All right.
Second.
Second by who, Gwen? Or Tracy? Any discussion? Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah.
Or Heidi? Well, I'm name crazy tonight.
Crazy, crazy.
Bad day.
So I wasn't here, and I apologize. I had family-related things going on. But I want to say that at first I was really happy about Bridget's efforts to redraw the districts, and I know that she worked very hard on them, and that's like a giant puzzle and everything. But the problem is not being addressed with the redrawing of these districts, because the problem is the giant undercount of the census. So that my ward, Ward 5, because it has a lot of off-campus student housing, and it was the pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic, when everybody went home, that ward was seriously undercounted. So in each of Bridget's redrawings of the maps that would be in accordance with our charter of not varying the wards between 10%, in each of them, Ward 5 gains a lot of territory. And that's fine with me. I don't mind having more people to represent. However, we all know that was bad data. It's bad data. Somehow the university was able to assist the census in getting an accurate count of the on-campus students, but we did not do that. Some other college towns did for the off-campus students. So now what we have is bad data. I would be fine if we had new housing developments like we did in 2010, which caused us to reapportion, and Ward 5 gave some territory over to Ward 4, and some other things happened too as well to reapportion. That was based on better data. But the fact is that it's bad data. And right now, the only way I can see to rectify that situation was actually also mentioned by Bridget, which was to change, to put it on, to put a charter amendment on the ballot, to change it from a 10% variance to a 15% variance, which would largely leave the wards intact. You're going to hear probably some arguments that the wards, that the people in those wards will be confused, and I think they will be, that there's some strange, situations where Ward 1 jumps across the river, and those are all true in those maps that Bridget so diligently worked on and did a great job doing. However, the fact is that it was bad data, and we know it. So Ward 5 turns out to be this super ward, this bloated ward, and Robin can say that Ward 3 would, in these situations, lose a lot of territory. Ward 4 could lose some territory. Ward 6 would lose territory, but it's all illusory. That's why I believe now that the best situation would be to put this on the ballot, let the citizens decide. If they vote no, which is totally their right, then we would have to look at one of the two maps that Bridget drew based on the bad data. in order to comply with our charter, because we would go back to the 10%. And it has to be based on the census. That's all I have to say is, I am in favor of putting it on the ballot, letting the citizens decide, and then, you know, whatever they decide, then we do have a plan B. If the wards are going to change, then they're going to change. But I think it's only right that we base it on better data. We did not have large amounts of new housing developed, like in the 2010 census. This is completely based on an undercount, which hurts us in other ways, but it shouldn't. This would just serve to change the wards so dramatically that I don't think it's a good idea.
Further discussion? Mr. Turner?
Yeah.
For next.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Turner?
Oh, okay. To be honest with you, I thought that,
Speak to the
we
microphone.
had, I thought that we had, because it had not percolated up again, I thought that the Community Development Department was comfortable with the numbers. I didn't know that there was still an issue hanging out there. I had wondered about that prior, but during all this discussion, the undercount wasn't brought up. That creates a whole nother issue for me. I'm supportive of the 15% anyway, but the issue that there's a probability that we're working through this on flawed data, then we need to have Bridget speak to that. Because I think this is important enough that we know if there is a significant undercount, that we're basing how we want to move forward in addressing the size of our wards, or if we're working from the standpoint that we have flawed information and that we'll be trying to make our judgment based on that. Is there any way that we can get that input? Can we call Bridget?
No.
Or not, because there's a motion on the...
No, there's a motion on the floor.
Okay.
Can I
Well-
pass it?
Robin still has the floor.
That's the concern that I have right now. And I think we really need to know that before we start making judgments, although I'm supportive of the 15% change at any rate. But I still think that I'm a little skeptical about this now. Not about my vote on the 15%, but about where we're at with the numbers and the implications of moving forward without having a sounder basis for making that judgment.
Garrett, you're next.
Yeah. You know, it's not bad data, because the data that was collected properly via the census, and that's the way the data's always been collected, regardless of whatever the population trends are. It does reflect it. It may be bad information relative, but the answer to that is not bad policy, right? So to change the charter to based on what you're saying is bad data is bad policy. The data will be adjusted and the policy will be adjusted. What you're doing is setting a precedent that every time you don't like the information and you want to call something bad information, bad data, misinformation, whatever you want to call it, and then you're going to turn around and say, well, that's justification for changing our policy or changing our charter. It's a terrible precedent to set. So it'll get the data will get straightened out at the next census, and the whole point and the whole history of the Charter Review Committee is to address issues like this, where you allow the citizens to have input in that, which by the way, you're selling the citizens short by saying they're going to get confused. Everybody gets a letter from the that tells them where they're able to vote and where they can vote. So to say that it's going to create mass confusion, again, is a bad rationale for changing the policy. So I'm going to vote against it. I think, we've asked a independent person to come up with the lines, the boundaries for the wards, and that's precisely everybody wants throughout not only Ohio but the rest of the country. When you talk about gerrymandering, this is you're practicing the same things that you're complaining about that is happening at the state and national level in politics, and I think that's we're above that, of getting into the politics of directing and trying to gerrymander wards. So again, bad precedent, bad policy. I'm going to vote against it.
Now, Heidi.
And I would say that
I'm sorry.
I'm quite certain that Bridget did not advocate a charter amendment to go into the voters. So,
Heidi, you're next.
Yes, I just want to say that the 10%, nobody could have foreseen that we were going to have a pandemic that would empty out a large portion of our city. Nobody could have foreseen that when they developed that 10% variance. So that happened. That happened. Maybe it'll happen again in the future, and this would protect us in the future, but it would certainly protect us in the current time from having to redo our whole city based on, and I'm going to call it again, bad data, because while they tried to do the correct census, they did it the right way, the just account could not be done correctly. And I do know in Ward 5, I have a lot of households that happen to be students, that happen to not be present. They went home. That's the only explanation I can come up with as to why Ward 5 gained so much territory in this new redrawing of the maps. The only explanation. I'm sure that this happened in other places in the city as well, but Ward 5 has, being at the center of the city, has a lot of student households. And I think that 10% seemed reasonable at one time. I think 15% would tend to protect us now and into the future a lot better. So we are kind of stuck with the census that we have.
of course we are.
But we're not stuck with the number, that percentage. That is something we created as a city that we put into our charter. We're not stuck with that number. And that's why I think we ought to give it a chance to have it discussed by the citizens and decided by the citizens.
John.
Anybody watch the Browns game last night?
It was Monday.
It was Monday night, Joe.
Point of order.
You know, I watched it. I didn't like the score. But, you know, that was the result. That was the actual score. It came down. And whether you want to call it bad data or gerrymandering or steering like they do in the real estate business, it was what it was. And if we were that much different because of all the bad things that happened in the community, that's going to have a tremendous reversal in the next census. And Bridget's probably going to have to go through all that again if we change it to 15%. If we were talking about something like this going on, we should have did it before the two maps were drawn up and everything else. Because, you know, you're not going to change what happens naturally all the time. And if you try to adjust all your rules to it, I don't know, I think things will balance, you know, when we just stay where we're at. And, you know, if we don't like what the the results were of the game, play another game, something, but I don't know, I'm gonna vote no.
Tracy?
Yeah, first of all, I disagree that it's gerrymandering, because changing it to 15% will just leave the wards the way they are. And if it's considered gerrymandering, then it was gerrymandering before, because it's just going to keep the wards the way they are. It will help the staff in the future, so they don't have to go through this process, which is very difficult and time-consuming for them, and we really appreciate what Bridget did. Also, it will keep the wards more contiguous. If we stick at the 10%, then there's a section of Ward 6 that goes into Ward 1. It's across the river, so technically it might be contiguous looking at the map, but geographically it actually is not. There's also going to be a big chunk of Ward 2 that goes into Ward 3 across the river again, so that is not really geographically contiguous. And unless you have worked at a poll during the election season, you have no idea how easily people get confused. My husband has worked at the polls for the last 3 years, and people get confused by the most smallest things. And a lot of people, if they go to one precinct to vote and they're told, I'm sorry, you're in the wrong precinct, you have to go across town to another one, they just won't vote. So it will end up disenfranchising enough people, I would say, that it's a concern. So I am voting to move it to 15%, which was actually Dave Roller's suggestion.
Any more, Robin?
Yeah, I appreciate what Heidi was saying. I'm trying to piggyback off of that, actually. There are the historical implications that also are factors in keeping things contiguous. People, and one of the reasons I really supported that is because, as Heidi had indicated earlier, I saw the kind of dismemberment and disjointment of my ward, the implications for people that I become their councilman to. And they have, over the years, have developed a likeness in their overall area of interest, politically, and as it relates to other things. These have become communities. That's what happens in these situations where you create these wards. The use of the word gerrymandering is just quite bizarre to me, because it shows a total lack of understanding of what gerrymandering is, as opposed to there was no political benefit derived by this. We're not looking around to look at an area and say, if I move this area here, that will, and that's just a slap in the face to people who are proposing that, because it's not political. It is a historical fact that once you have these things more contiguous, people relate better to the overall process. And that's the desire to do this. Is they pointed it out. It seems to me an area where you're moving people to be confused, and they will become, their view, disenfranchised in the process. If taking it to the ballot will allow people to make their own determination, no biggie. They can either say, we think that it should remain 10%, there's a reason we had it at that, or it could move to 15, where there's a lot less likely possibilities occurring that we'll be continuing to give people whiplash about where they factor in on this. So I mean, you know, I was concerned about the numbers. I'm not concerned about the philosophy of doing this. It seems to me to be very reasonable. And I'm hoping that the rest of the council will see that as a benefit as well.
John?
Oh,
What?
Gwen should be next, actually. She hasn't had the chance yet.
Do you have your hand up, Gwen? I didn't see it, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I apologize.
I'll wave bigger next time. Sorry about that. I just had a couple of points that I wanted to make in considering this. It's, while I understand my fellow council members' position, I think that we already have a mechanism in place for charter review changes. I think that as a council, we can make a recommendation that charter review consider this or look into it. It's been in place since 1970, and it hasn't been altered since that time, so I think so far it's been working pretty well. And like I said, with that mechanism in place, it makes it very difficult for me to personally justify the cost of a special election. I'm concerned.
There's no cost.
There's no cost with it? Okay, all right.
There is a cost, it's not a special election.
Okay, all right, all right, my misunderstanding there.
But there's a
But-
cost.
Okay, but that doesn't change my last point, which is just that I would have a difficult time explaining the benefit to residents to make this change. It strikes me as a slightly more bureaucratic kind of decision that I think it's our responsibility and the charter review's responsibility to actually to manage. And I think it would be, in considering this and how I would approach a resident with it, I have a very difficult time coming up with a number of pros and cons to justify their time and attention to it when it's something that our charter review, like I said, can have a look at. And since it's been in place for so long, we've got 2 viable maps that Bridget has created, and I think that I would like to just go ahead and consider which of those 2 maps applies best. So I'll be voting no for this.
Okay, thank you, John.
Yeah. Maybe my head is mixed up or something, but I'm thinking that if we would go to the voters for a change in the future, we would leave an imbalance in the count in the wards until, what, 2025? Or first you got to have an election, then you have to have a redrawing of the maps, and or whatever they do with them. And so then, by us wanting to change something, we've made an unfair imbalance. Maybe I'm wrong in my thinking, but
That's it? All right, let's get back to...
I have one more, since you're allowing discussion.
Well, we got into a committee report. so
I
let's
just want to
vote.
say that the initial request to change the initial recommendation by Bridget for the wards was made because a council member solicited somebody to run for council, and when, with the changes that Bridget recommended, that person would have been in that person's ward. That is gerrymandering.
That's,
All right, let's get back to the motion. Motion was to accept the action. All in favor signify by, let's have hand. All in favor signify by raising your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Against? Okay, 3. So it passes.
All that for nothing.
I apologize. Instead of being at the motion, we got into a committee report, and that's not right. Would the clerk read draft number 2023-61 in title only?
Draft 2023-061, an ordinance providing an amendment to the Charter of the City of Kent, Ohio, to be submitted at the primary election on March 19th, 2024, which will amend Article 12, Section 12.02, titled Voting Ward Apportionment, and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Tracy. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
No.
Mr. Kuhar?
no.
Ms. Rosenberg?
No.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
yes.
And Ms. Swallet?
Yes.
Suspension does not pass.
Suspension did not pass.
Move first reading.
Do we have a
Mike
second?
made the motion for first
Second.
reading. Who seconded it?
I did.
Roger.
Roger. Is there any further discussion on this?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that the aspect of waiting till the charter review to go through the 15% was turned down. I think it was too much time would pass until we could vote on it for the charter review, so that's why we put that on the ballot now.
Okay.
And
No
who
more-
said that?
No more, Heidi?
And how do you know this?
Bridget said it would take too much, that there was supposed to be a certain amount of time. Well, there's no timeline to get this done. There's no timeline to have it done, but she said the sooner it's resolved, the better, so that's all.
All right, I think that's it. Please call the roll for...
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
No.
Mr. Kuhar?
No.
Ms. Rosenberg?
No.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
And Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
That passes. First reading.
First
passes.
reading passes. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's all for community. Oh, moving into community development, Mr. Kuhar.
Okay, I would move for the approval of the September 6, 2023 minutes and the one action.
Second.
Second by Mike. Is there any discussion?
Can we separate those? Please?
John, can you redo your motion and separate it?
Second.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go back to the approval of the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Back up, we gotta get a second. Second by
Second,
Mike.
sorry.
Is there any discussion? Let me handle this, John, that's my job.
All right.
No discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposing?
Abstain.
And one three abstentions. All right.
Okay, and now the one action.
Yeah.
Second.
Second by Mike. Any discussion on the action? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
One draft.
All right, we got one draft. Draft number 2023-62, entitled only.
Draft 2023-062, an ordinance authorizing the transfer of a Trex liquor license into the City of Kent by Fast Mex LLC, an Ohio limited liability company, conditioned upon the execution of a development agreement between the City of Kent, Ohio, and Fast Mex LLC, and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Farrar?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Adoption.
Second.
Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-062 passes.
Okay, thank you. Moving into the Health and Safety Committee, Mr. Amrine.
Yes, I'd like to move the minutes for the September 6th.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Abstain.
And two abstentions? Okay. Pat,
Should be 3.
I'm going to abstain, too.
got it. Three abstentions.
Got it.
And I'd like to move the 2 actions recommended.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Is there any discussion on the actions? Seeing,
Only one action.
One action, I'm
One
sorry.
action, yeah.
My apologies.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
One action.
Singular.
Okay.
We're all in it together tonight.
Trying to mess with us.
All in favor of the action signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, let's pass. Would the clerk read draft number 2023-63 in title only?
Draft 2023-063, an ordinance amending Chapter 355 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Kent titled Municipal Parking Lots and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Mike.
Mr. Farrar?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Farrar?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-063 passes.
Thank you. Moving into street sidewalks and utilities, Mr. Sidoti.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the committee meeting minutes of September 6, 2023.
Second.
You can't move it.
Oh, I can't move it?
You're going to abstain, right?
We're going to have to go to your vice chairman
Oh,
because
yeah,
you're
I'm
absent.
sorry, I forgot. Yes, Tracy. I'd like
I'd like to move the meetings of September 6th, 2023 committee meeting.
Second.
Second by Mike. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Abstain.
And 3 abstentions.
And I'd like to move the action.
Second.
Any discussion on the actions? All in favor of the actions signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. That's it. Moving into Finance Committee, Mr. DeLeon.
Yes, like to move September 6th, 2023 committee meeting.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Abstain.
3 abstentions. Heidi, where are you?
Do you
Abstain.
All right, I
Abstain.
didn't hear it. Okay.
Sorry.
I'd like to move
Count
the
me
three
on, yeah.
actions, please.
Second.
Second by Gwen. Any discussion on the actions? Seeing none, all in favor of the actions signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Would the clerk read draft number 2023-64 in title only?
Draft 2023-064, an ordinance authorizing the trade-in, auction, disposal of vehicles, large equipment, and trailers not needed for municipal purposes and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Please call the roll for suspension.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach? Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Suspension passes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Roger. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Okay, Ordinance 2023-064 passes.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2023-65 in title only?
Draft 2023-065, a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Gwen. Please call the roll on suspension.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Gwen. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Please call the roll for adoption.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-065 passes.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2023-66 in title only?
Draft 2023-066, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2022-138, the current appropriation ordinance passed December 21st, 2022, so as to adjust appropriations, transfers, and advances from the various funds of the City of Kent to individual accounts for the current expenses of the city for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2023, and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Heidi.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
And Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-066 passed.
Okay, that's it for finance. The only one that didn't pass was the first reading was draft number 2023-061. That'll be on the next agenda for council. Unfinished business. Anything, John?
You know, the gentleman came up tonight talking about solar electric energy, and I don't know if it's been 10 or 12 years or whatever, this council had passed an ordinance, resolution, whatever, to install domestic water solar on one of the facilities in the city of Kent. And to this date, there still is nothing in place where we have a fire station that is a perfect place for them to go. And maybe when we're looking at that, which we've already passed, we could look a little bit into what was suggested this evening about finding some locations for solar electric with some type of a partnership. Maybe even out on Lake Street where we have a vacant lot up there that was supposed to be, you know, built on over a certain period of time. Maybe they would like to do something to help develop some solar energy. That's
Garrett?
all.
I had new business.
Oh.
so.
Heidi?
Yeah, I want to speak to that. John, I really do, I agree with you. I had an interesting conversation with Bridget today. I raised the same thing about installing some solar arrays because we went up to New York, state of New York, on a trip to Ithaca, and there were solar fields everywhere, and rooftop solar as well. So, you know, we're a little bit behind the curve, but I've been assured that our sustainability staff person is hot on the task of looking at some options, looking at some ways that we can fund these things. So, you know, these things develop over time. We are moving forward. It may not look like we're doing much, but things are happening.
Only been 12 years.
Yeah, well, to look at the various locations where we could do something and then have the end use in place, there's a lot of factors on how we're going to fund it. So I think that John raises an important point, and you know, we just want to cheerlead our city staff to continue doing the good work based on our climate action plan.
I mean, it won't be a third world city.
Any more unfinished business? Seeing none on new business, Mr. Ferrer?
Yep. I would suggest that we refer this issue to the Sustainability Commission. That's what we have them for. So I would move that we refer this to the Sustainability Commission for their review and comment.
I'd second that.
Second by, okay, further discussion, Mr. Ferrer?
No, I think it's a good idea.
Mr. Turner, further discussion?
No.
Ms. John?
Now, what we're referring is, that is the proposal that we heard this evening, or
Yeah,
or
to
or the thing that
explore
we
the
already-
opportunity,
or
for
what we
explore
already
economic
passed. Yeah.
opportunity for clean energy and solar.
Any more discussion?
Yeah.
Mr.
And I would
Sidoti?
assume that it includes that they maybe do a survey of our land that is available and what that could sustain, whether, you know, the open land that, maybe some of the brownfields, like Mogador Road or something like that. I'm just assuming that'll all be part of that.
Any other discussion? All in favor of Mr. Ferrer's motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that passes. Any more new business? Comments by council members? Anything? Mr. Sidoti?
Yeah, you know, last week, I apologize, I wasn't here, but I did watch our council meeting. Was that 2 weeks ago? See, that's what happens when you go under the knife. And I didn't take a whole lot of pain medication. Let me
You know,
tell
you
you
didn't
that,
have the same anesthetics.
I was pretty cogent at the time. I just want to address a little bit this issue about the issue about changing of the boundaries of wards and everything. And this is not to denigrate any of the thinking of my fellow council people, who I think people know I really have a deep and abiding respect for. Maybe what we're doing is we're nibbling around a greater issue, because since 1970, when we put our charter in review, we've been operating the way we've been operating. So there's some questions, and I don't want anyone to think that I have a preconceived notion of what should happen, okay? This is what I used to tell my students. I'm throwing a rock in the pond, because I do agree with Garrett Ferrara completely that I trust the citizens in Kent. I don't trust us enough to challenge our citizens to think, and to think about where we've been over the last, let's see, 1970, 53 years in this structure that we have, the ward structure, the way we elect council people and everything. So I would pose a question, and I would hope that there are people watching out there, and I would say anyone who's a citizen of Kent, that because there's been some response to what you did 2 weeks ago. There have been some comments in the paper, and there have been some people online making comments. But I think there's some interesting questions there that our whole citizenry should ponder. And first and foremost is, should we even have wards? Are wards really necessary when you look at the small geographic unit that Kent, has? I don't know, I'm used to wards, but maybe it would be interesting to have a conversation with our community about how do they see that? And how do they see that working? And then, of course, that presupposes the next conversation, and that is, well, if we don't have wards, shouldn't maybe we be all at large? Now, Heidi and Robin and a few people use commentary like my ward and the people I serve. I would argue that we serve everyone in this city. Every decision we make here, every time we vote, it's not, okay, I'm only going to vote on my ward. We're making votes that impact everyone in the city. So another question might be, well, if that's the case, maybe we should all be at large. And maybe that would serve better. And I can see a lot of reasons that wouldn't work, just like I can see a lot of reasons wards wouldn't work. But I would trust that someone, and maybe the League of Women Voters, if there's someone here from the League of Women Voters, should think about that. Should think about having a public comment, and let it be a ground-up commentary. I mean, I can imagine the paper may go out and say, that's Sidoti, he's crazy, look what he did, he just threw this out. But I really believe that all we're doing and changing, and I voted for it, I'm saying I voted for it, but we're just nibbling. We're just nibbling around our charter, and we're really not looking at a comprehensive review. And we wait, is it every 10 years, I think, that we have a charter review? 10 years, for goodness, think about this, the world changes dramatically. We need to have solar arrays, right? I mean, we should be doing that. We're behind the times, and maybe it would be good to toss this out. So anyone out there in YouTube land, if you feel presupposed, I think you ought to jot your comments down and send them to the City Council or send them to the League of Women Voters to have conversation. I'm not advocating any of that, but I am advocating there should be real conversation. And to really, really create havoc, I think it should be all nonpartisan, because I really believe that we serve all of our community, regardless of what party we are about, or, So anyway, that's my thought. And I waited to council member comments because I really don't believe we should push this to a committee or any of that. I think it should be a groundswell. If there are people that feel strongly that this conversation is worthy in our city, then we should begin to generate that, because I don't see any change occurring on any of that even if it was to happen till 2026 or further. When's the next,
2025.
Yeah.
What is it?
The charter review?
Yeah.
2 more years.
2025.
Oh, there we go. So it would be the
Not
charter
that far
review.
away.
So it's something to think about. And again, I'm not advocating it. Don't hear I'm advocating. I'm advocating thoughtful conversation, not knee-jerk back to, oh, God, I got to protect wards, or, oh, man, I got to have a ward, or, no knee-jerk. Let's think about that a little bit, and let's see if we can come up with some real arguments for both sides, some rational thinking for both sides. And to me, it's better than this nibbling around, because, I mean, it just seems like, I don't know. I don't like this nibbling. I agree with Gwen and Garrett in some ways. That it just doesn't sit right. I think we have to do it, but it just doesn't sit right, because there's a broader issue here. And the broader issue is getting more people engaged in this process. Why is it that we have uncontested elections? It's crazy. You go through a primary, and why have a November election? Because if no one runs, all this stuff. So I think this is worthy of conversation, and I trust our citizens. If they say, no, we want to stay the same, I'm good with that. If they say, we'd like to change one of those things, I'm good with that. So anyway, those are my comments, Mr. Mayor. I just put them out there.
Good thought. Any more comments? Mr. Turner?
First off, I want to thank Mr. Wilson for his Wilson, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I want to thank you for coming up and presenting your thoughts and your views. I think they've been very helpful and will help move us in a direction where I think Rogers, it'll get people thinking and get us moving to perhaps do things that will be beneficial to this community. And I appreciate residents when they step up and help push that. as it relates to what Mr. Sidoti was saying, there's a rationale for wars. It's that the interest of the community versus the interest of individual areas in the community. It is very possible that, based on your suggestions of going all at large, you could have all the people elected at large from one area of the community as opposed to other areas of the community. The integrity of that process is now thrown into question. All through our history, there are rationales that can be applied. I mean, it's always nice to be able to go, I'm going to leave it to the people. Ultimately, well, there are minority groups who have issues that they want addressed too. They may be based on where they live geographically. They could be based on any number of things. And their interests will not be met by viewing the totality of the community. You've got 3 at-large council people to address that. There's a reason we have a bicameral relationship in federal government. It's for segments of the greater whole. It's for the greater whole then. It's represented by the Senate. That's basically what this concept is here. It's a reflection of national politics, and it relates. I know there will be times where, quite frankly, if you were to go to Mississippi in the 60s, where they went to at-larges, there was a reason for that. It was to eliminate the participation of the black population. So, going to this amalgam that you may like to see has implications as well. Just bringing that up. I also want to look to the people there and let them know that will be discussed as to the relevance of why government functions the way it functions and why some communities do some things and others do others. Hopefully, by putting this on the ballot, we'll see what they think. 10, 15%. Is that logical? They'll tell us. This is an opportunity here. So I trust the judgment of the people just as much. We're not voting on this. They will ultimately make the determination about whether or not they feel, we've overreached. They always do. They're smart enough to do that as well. And so I'm hopeful that there will be the discussion. Maybe the League of Women Voters. I always figure if you don't want a political affiliation, you don't have to have one. Nobody requires you to be a Democrat or Republican or an independent. You can affiliate with whom you wish. So, there are implications to everything everybody's throwing out here. But I think you're right. I think we can discuss it. But like I said, the nonpartisan deal to me has always been, nobody's requiring people to run as party people. They don't have to. You ran as a Democrat.
Mr. Mayor.
I ran as you did. I ran as a Democrat. I would like to be able to keep my party affiliation. I figure it has value. It meant something to me.
Mr. Mayor. I just want to correct something. Mr. Turner, I'm not saying I advocate any of those.
I thought that's what I heard.
No, I advocate...
I'm not saying you advocated them either. I'm saying
you brought it up and we'll have a chance. I advocate that discussion because I think that discussion really gets to the heart of the issues that seem to have bubbled up in terms of wards and those type of things. So I'm saying I think it's a bigger issue, that's all. I'm not advocating those. I'm just advocating the discussion. I think that's real meaningful discussion, and I agree with you. I don't want to discuss it here. I think it should be discussed out there, and then let them bring it to us if they really feel that strong.
Then we'll discuss it.
Yeah, then we'll discuss it, sure.
Two good point of views. Does anybody else have comment?
Have a point of view.
What?
Have a point of view.
Okay, back to mayor's report. Wow, I get to it. Just got to tell you, spent a lot of time downtown Friday and Saturday, and I know we always hear we waste money, but I did not hear one bad remark over our new city administration, City Hall.
Yeah.
Everybody says how nice that building looks when you come across the bridge, how it blends in with the rest of the downtown, and it's about time we got city services back together. I tell you, for all of us and Melanie and staff and the rest of them, Mr. Roller and his staff, thank you. I think we did a good thing here. So, we got a executive session.
Yeah, I'd like to move an executive session to discuss an employee evaluation and compensation, as well as discussion with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are the subject of pending or imminent
Is there a second?
court action.
Second?
Second by John, roll call.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. DeLeon?
Yes.
Mr. Farrar?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar? Ms. Rosenberg? Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes?
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?